Keanu Reeves sat in silence, staring at the letter in front of him. His hands trembled as he finally found the courage to open it. Inside was the truth he never expected, a truth that had been hidden for years. And in this video, you will see why that moment changed everything. The night was quiet, yet inside his heart a storm was already rising. Keanu sat alone in his living room, the faint glow of a single lamp spilling across the table. In front of him lay an old envelope, yellowed at the edges, its seal still unbroken. He had looked at it for hours, afraid to touch it, afraid to know what it might carry. The envelope had arrived earlier that day without a return address, delivered by a stranger who said nothing, only bowed his head and left. Keanu's hands trembled as he stared at it. Why now? Why after so many years of silence? In the first few minutes of opening this scene, the audience is already pulled into the mystery. Keanu was a man who had faced many storms, but this envelope felt different. It was not just paper and ink, it was a doorway to something buried deep in his past. His chest rose and fell, each breath heavy with hesitation. He thought of throwing it away, burning it, pretending it never existed. Yet something inside him whispered that if he destroyed it, he would never forgive himself. The room around him seemed too quiet, too heavy. The ticking of the clock grew louder with each second, like a heartbeat reminding him that time was running out. As he reached for the envelope, his fingers brushed against the rough paper. The sound of the flap tearing open felt louder than thunder. His pulse quickened. He did not yet know what the words inside would reveal, but he knew they would change something forever. He slid out the folded sheet of paper, its creases sharp and its ink faded but still clear. His eyes scanned the first line, and his heart stopped. It was not just a letter. It was a confession. Someone had kept a truth from him, a truth so heavy it pressed against his chest like a weight he could not lift. The words spoke of family, of betrayal, of kindness lost in the noise of lies. It was written with trembling hands, as if the writer had carried guilt for years. Keanu leaned back in his chair, the letter shaking between his fingers. Memories rushed to him, memories of people he thought he had known, moments he thought were real. Now doubt wrapped itself around him like a shadow. The letter spoke of someone he once trusted deeply, someone who had walked beside him in his most painful days, someone he thought could never deceive him. Yet here, in his hands, were words that told a different story. He rose from his chair and began pacing the room. The floor creaked beneath his steps, the echo filling the silence. He wanted to believe the letter was false, some cruel trick played by a stranger. But the handwriting was familiar, painfully familiar. It belonged to someone he once loved, someone who had vanished without explanation. The truth in the ink was undeniable, and Keanu felt his throat tighten. For years, he had carried wounds he could never fully explain. Nights when he lay awake wondering why certain people left without a word, why moments of joy had turned into sudden silence. Now the answers stood before him in fragile handwriting. The letter did not only carry confession, it carried regret, sorrow, and a plea for forgiveness. He sank back into the chair, covering his face with his hands. The weight of the words was almost too much to bear. But beneath the pain there was something else. There was kindness hidden in the apology, a voice asking not to be hated but to be understood. It was a reminder that even those who hurt us may carry their own battles, battles invisible to the world. The camera would hold on Keanu's trembling hands as the letter slipped back onto the table. The audience would feel the tension, the unspoken question hanging in the air. What exactly had been hidden from him all these years? And why had the truth chosen to return now, when he had finally learned to live with silence? As the minutes stretched on, the atmosphere in the room shifted from fear to determination. Keanu knew this letter was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. He had two choices: to bury the truth again and let the wounds remain open, or to follow where the letter led and discover the full story. He looked once more at the final line of the letter, his lips moving as he read it quietly to himself. If you are reading this, it means I no longer have the strength to face you. But you must know the truth before it is too late. The words carved themselves into his heart. With a deep breath, Keanu folded the letter back into its envelope. His eyes lifted toward the window where the night sky stretched endlessly above. he whispered softly, almost to himself. Then I will find the truth. And with that vow, Part 1 closes, leaving the audience in suspense, eager to know what the letter truly revealed and how it would reshape everything he believed. The morning light entered softly through the curtains, but it felt heavy on Keanu's shoulders. He had not slept. The letter lay on the table where he had left it, almost glowing in the pale sunlight, as if it wanted to remind him it was still there, waiting for him to face what it carried. The silence in the room was sharp, broken only by the faint sound of traffic outside. Yet inside his chest everything was loud, his heart, his questions, his doubts. The letter had pulled open an old wound, one he had learned to hide from the world. He remembered the face of the one who had written it, the same person who had once given him hope during his darkest nights. Their sudden disappearance had left a scar, a question that had never been answered. And now, years later, the confession arrived. Keanu could not decide if it was a blessing or a curse. He sat at the edge of the bed, holding his head in his hands. Every thought returned to the same question. Why now? Why had the truth been hidden until this moment? His mind wandered to the possibility that the writer was no longer alive. The final line had sounded like a farewell, a whisper from someone who had already left this world. That thought cut deeper than the confession itself. Suspense grew heavier with every beat of silence. The letter had not explained everything. It had revealed pain, regret. But it had also left behind questions. There was mention of a choice made long ago, a decision that changed lives. Keanu wondered what kind of truth could be so heavy that it forced someone to disappear rather than speak. He rose from the bed and went to the small wooden box in his cupboard. Inside were things he had kept from the past. Old photographs, faded notes, pieces of memory he could never throw away. He searched until he found it. A photograph of him standing beside the very person whose handwriting now haunted him. The picture was old, edges curled, but the smiles were still alive. Looking at it now, Keanu felt a sting in his chest. How could someone smiling so openly hide so much pain and so much truth? He placed the photograph beside the letter on the table. Two pieces of the same puzzle, whispering stories he was not yet ready to face. The air in the room felt different, almost as if the walls themselves were listening. He poured himself a glass of water, but his hands shook so badly the glass nearly slipped. In that moment, another thought entered his mind. What if the letter was only the first step? What if there was more? He read it again slowly this time, searching for clues. In the second paragraph, there was a sentence he had overlooked in his shock. There are people who know, people who can tell you what I could not. His breath caught. The truth was not only hidden in the letter, it was out there, waiting to be discovered. The hook tightened around him. If there were people who knew, he had to find them. But who were they? And would they speak to him after all these years? He imagined walking into a room, asking for answers, and seeing faces turn away. The idea frightened him, yet it also filled him with determination. His phone buzzed on the table, breaking the silence. It was a message from an unknown number. You have read the letter. Now you must come. Keanu froze. His heart skipped. How could anyone know he had read it? His eyes scanned the message again. It was short, cold, and demanding. Suddenly the story deepened. It was not only about a letter. Someone was watching him, waiting for him to take the next step. The stranger who delivered the envelope yesterday was not just a messenger. They were part of something larger, something hidden. Keanu felt his throat dry. The words of the message were simple, but they carried weight. It meant his past was not silent anymore. It was alive, moving toward him. He did not reply, but his hands trembled as he set the phone back down. He knew this was not the end of the letter's truth. It was the beginning of a journey he could not escape. He walked toward the window and looked out. People passed by on the street, unaware of the storm inside him. They laughed, they carried bags, they lived ordinary lives. Keanu wondered if they, too, carried secrets they never spoke of. It reminded him that pain was often invisible, hidden behind gentle smiles. He turned back to the letter and read the last line again. It felt heavier now than it had last night. You must know the truth before it is too late. His chest tightened as he whispered those words aloud. Too late for what? Was someone else in danger? Or was it him? He sat down again, holding the letter close to his chest. He thought of the kindness he had received from strangers over the years, the resilience he had learned through loss, the humility that kept him grounded. This truth, whatever it was, would test all of those values. He knew the path ahead would not be simple. It would demand courage, patience, and the strength to face shadows long forgotten. The camera would linger on his face, his eyes filled with both fear and fire, as if he was standing at the edge of two worlds, one of silence, one of revelation. The decision was his. He could stay in the comfort of not knowing, or he could walk into the storm. With slow steps, he picked up the phone and typed a single word in reply to the unknown number. Where? His message was sent. There was no turning back now. The reply came almost instantly. Midnight. The place you fear most. Keanu stared at the screen, his breath caught in his chest. The place he feared most. He already knew what that meant. It was the old house, the place where everything had begun and where everything had ended. The suspense grew sharper, the air colder. Part 2 closes with Keanu preparing to face the shadows of his past at midnight, carrying the letter in his pocket, and a storm of questions in his heart. The night air was cold, sharp and almost alive with silence. Keanu walked slowly down the empty street, his hands deep in his coat pockets, the letter folded tightly against his chest. Every step echoed louder than it should, like the ground itself was warning him to turn back. But he kept moving, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, though his heart pounded with the weight of fear. The message on his phone had been clear: midnight, the place he feared most. That place was the old house at the edge of the city. For years he had avoided it. Its broken windows and locked doors were not just wood and glass. They were reminders of everything he had lost. Every time he thought of it, memories rushed in, laughter that turned to silence, promises that ended in betrayal, and the face of the person who had written the letter. As he reached the corner of the street, he stopped for a moment, looking at the world around him. The city lights glittered in the distance. But here, closer to the house, the lamps were dim, almost dead. It felt as if the neighborhood itself wanted to push him away. He drew in a slow breath and whispered to himself, "I can't run anymore." The words were quiet, but inside they shook like thunder. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. Footsteps, faint, but steady. Keanu turned his head quickly, scanning the street, but no one was there. The steps grew louder, closer, until he felt as though someone was walking right behind him. His breath caught, and for a moment, he considered running. But then the steps stopped. The silence returned, heavier than before. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with trembling fingers. Another message: "Don't be afraid. Keep walking." He stared at the screen, his chest tightening. Who was watching him? How did they know his every move? His throat burned with questions. But he said nothing, only put the phone back and forced his legs to keep moving forward. As the house came into view, a wave of memories struck him. The cracked walls, the broken fence, the shadows in the windows. He had been here before, many years ago, on a night just as cold, just as heavy. And that was the night everything had ended. He stood at the gate, staring at the door that once welcomed him, but now looked like a silent guard. The letter felt heavier in his pocket, as if it wanted to be read here, in this place, where the truth had been buried. He reached out, his hand trembling as it touched the rusted handle. Before he could push the door, his phone buzzed again. This time the message read, "Inside on the table." "You will understand." Keanu's heart raced. He slowly opened the door, the sound of the hinges screaming into the night. Dust and shadows filled the air. He stepped inside, the wooden floor creaking beneath his weight. The air smelled of old memories, of silence too long kept. And there, in the center of the room, was a table. On it lay another envelope. This one was newer, untouched, its seal unbroken. Keanu's hand shook as he reached for it. The moment he touched the paper, a sudden memory returned. He saw himself years ago in this very room, arguing, shouting, tears burning his face. He remembered the last words spoken here, words that cut like knives. "One day you will know why I left." The new envelope felt warm in his hand, as if someone had just placed it there. He opened it quickly, his breath shallow. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and on it only a few words. "You are not alone. The truth is bigger than both of us." Keanu's chest tightened as his eyes read the words again and again. The handwriting was the same as the first letter, but this message felt different. It wasn't just a confession, it was a warning. Suddenly, the sound of movement came from the corner of the room. A shadow shifted too fast to be the wind. Keanu turned, his eyes wide. There, standing half hidden in the darkness, was a figure, silent, still, watching him. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Who are you?" The figure did not answer. Instead, they stepped forward slowly, the dim light falling across their face. Keanu's heart nearly stopped. It was a face he knew, a face he had not seen in years, the very person he thought was gone forever. The world seemed to collapse into silence. His knees felt weak, his throat dry, his mind unable to believe what his eyes were seeing. The figure looked at him, their eyes filled with pain, and finally spoke. "Keanu, the letter was only the beginning. There are things you were never told, things that will change everything you thought you knew about your life." The words hit him like a storm. Part of him wanted to run, part of him wanted to cry, and part of him wanted to reach out and hold the person who had once meant everything to him. But before he could speak, the figure raised a hand. "Not now. If we talk here, it will destroy us both. Meet me tomorrow. I will tell you the truth. But remember this. You were never alone, not for a single day." Keanu's chest ached with a mix of relief and fear. He wanted to shout, to demand answers now, but he saw the pain in the figure's eyes, the heaviness of carrying secrets for so long. He knew the truth could not be rushed. The figure stepped back into the shadows, and within seconds, they were gone. The house grew silent again, leaving Keanu standing with the letter in his hand, his body trembling, his mind filled with more questions than answers. The night outside was still, but inside him a storm had begun. His life was no longer just his own. It was tied to secrets larger than he could imagine. Part 3 closes with Keanu leaving the old house at dawn, the letter pressed tightly against his chest, his heart torn between the joy of seeing a lost face and the fear of what tomorrow's truth would finally reveal. The sun was rising, but for Keanu the night had never truly ended. He walked slowly back to his home, every step heavier than the last. The streets were almost empty, only a few people beginning their morning routines. But he felt as if every eye could see the storm inside him. The memory of that figure in the old house burned in his mind. He had seen their face. He had heard their voice. They were alive. After so many years of silence, they were standing in front of him again. He unlocked his door and stepped inside, his hands trembling. The letter was still clutched tightly in his grip, the words written on it echoing in his head. "You are not alone. The truth is bigger than both of us." He dropped the letter on the table, but it did not free him from its weight. He paced the room, his mind filled with questions that refused to rest. Why had they disappeared all those years ago? What truth was so big it needed to be hidden for so long? And why now? Why return now when he had learned to live with the silence? He poured himself a glass of water but barely touched it. Instead, he sat down and stared at the clock. Every tick of the second hand felt like a hammer striking deeper into his chest. The figure had said, "Meet me tomorrow," but tomorrow felt like years away. He wanted answers now. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. A new message appeared on the screen. "Don't tell anyone! If you speak before we meet, everything will end." Keanu froze. His eyes scanned the message again. The warning was clear, but it only made his heart pound harder. Who else knew about this? Who was watching? He set the phone down and leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. Memories pulled him into the past. He saw the night they vanished, the night he had stood at the doorway of the old house shouting their name. He remembered the echo of silence, the feeling of betrayal that never healed. And now, after years of carrying that wound, they had stepped back into his life, speaking words heavy with mystery. The day stretched painfully slow. Every sound around him seemed sharper. The creak of the floor, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint voices of neighbors outside. He sat with the letter again, reading every line as though searching for a secret hidden between the words. He traced the handwriting with his finger, whispering to himself, "Why couldn't you tell me then?" As night began to fall again, suspense wrapped itself around him tighter. His chest felt heavy, his breath uneven. He kept looking at the clock, waiting for the hour to pass. Finally, when darkness settled outside, he knew it was time. He walked through the streets again, but this time, he noticed something strange. A car was parked across from his building, its engine off but its windows tinted dark. He slowed his steps, his eyes narrowing. Had it been there before, or was it watching him now? A chill crept down his spine. His phone buzzed once more. Another message: trust no one. The truth has eyes everywhere. Keanu swallowed hard, his heart racing. The hook grew tighter. This was no longer about just one letter or one person. Something larger was moving in the shadows. As he approached the meeting place, he felt the weight of silence pressing down on him again. He reached the corner of an abandoned park where the streetlights flickered weakly. The air smelled of rain and rust. He stood there, waiting. The letter folded in his coat pocket like a beating heart. Minutes passed. No one came. The tension clawed at him. Then, suddenly, a voice whispered from behind. "You came!" Keanu spun around, and once again, the figure stood before him. But this time, their eyes were filled with something different. Fear. They stepped closer, their voice trembling. "I wanted to tell you everything that night at the house, but we were not alone. Someone followed me. They cannot know what I told you. If they find out, it will destroy us both." Keanu's throat tightened. What truth is so dangerous? Why hide it from me all these years? The figure's eyes glistened as though holding back tears. "Because the truth is not just about me. It is about you. And if you hear it before you are ready, it could break you." Keanu's breath caught. His chest felt like it might burst. "Tell me," he whispered. "Whatever it is, I can carry it." But the figure shook their head. "Not here, not now. There are eyes on us. Tomorrow before the sun sets, I will take you to the place where it all began. Only there can I explain." As they spoke, the sound of a car engine roared nearby. Headlights flashed through the park, sweeping across the trees like searching eyes. The figure's face went pale. They gripped Keanu's arm and whispered, "Run!" Without another word, they vanished into the shadows, leaving Keanu frozen in place. The car slowed, its lights shining directly on him. Panic surged through his veins and he turned, running into the dark streets. His heart pounded as footsteps echoed behind him, chasing, closing in. He darted into a narrow alley, pressing his back against the wall, holding his breath. The car slowed, the footsteps stopped, and then silence returned. But Keanu knew it was not over. Someone was watching. Someone wanted to stop the truth from reaching him. As he finally returned home, drenched in sweat and trembling, he realized one thing. The letter had opened a door he could never close. Part 4 closes with Keanu sitting in the dark, the letter in his hand, his chest heavy with fear and hope, knowing that tomorrow would either heal him or break him forever. The night was long, and Keanu barely closed his eyes. Every time he drifted into sleep, his mind dragged him back with flashes of the park, the headlights, the voice whispering, "Run." He sat up on the couch, staring at the letter in his hand, reading the words again and again until they burned into his memory. "You are not alone. The truth is bigger than both of us." The sentence grew louder with every hour, as if it carried something hidden he still could not see. When the first light of morning touched the sky, he rose and walked to the window. Outside, the car was gone. The street was quiet. But the unease inside him had only grown. Whoever had been watching him the night before was not finished. He knew the silence around him was only temporary. He brewed a cup of coffee but barely drank it. Instead, he sat in the chair with his head in his hands. His heart felt torn. One part of him wanted to demand the truth immediately, to pull it out of the shadows no matter the cost. Another part of him whispered that maybe some truths should remain buried. What if the secret destroyed more than it healed? What if knowing it left him emptier than before? Just as his thoughts grew darker, his phone buzzed. A new message appeared. "Sunset. Come alone. The place where the river bends. Do not tell anyone." Keanu exhaled slowly. The time had been set. Another place, another test. His hands trembled as he put the phone down. The hours stretched endlessly before sunset, but he could not stay still. He paced the room, cleaned the table, opened old boxes, anything to quiet his restless mind. Yet everything he touched seemed to pull him back to the same question. What was the truth that had been hidden from him for so long? In one of the old boxes, he found another photograph. This one showed him sitting at a table years ago with the same person who had now returned from the shadows. Their smiles looked real, their eyes full of warmth. Keanu stared at the picture for a long time, whispering, "Why did you leave me without saying a word? Why carry this secret alone?" His voice cracked as he spoke, the pain raw in every syllable. Afternoon passed, and soon the sky began to dim. Keanu, dressed in a plain jacket, slipped the letter into his pocket and walked out. Every step felt like a drumbeat leading him toward a storm. The path to the river was quiet, lined with trees whose branches stretched like arms across the sky. The air smelled of water and earth, heavy with the coming night. When he reached the bend, he stopped. The river flowed dark and steady, reflecting the last colors of sunset. And there, standing near the edge, was the figure. Keanu's chest tightened. He walked closer, his heart pounding. The figure turned slowly, their face pale but their eyes carrying something deep, something heavy. "You came," they whispered. Keanu nodded, his voice low. "I need to know. No more waiting. No more running." The figure looked down at the ground, their shoulders trembling. "The truth is not simple. It is not clean. It will hurt you." "Hurt me or not," Keanu said, his eyes locked on theirs. "I deserve to know." The figure's hands shook as they reached into their coat. They pulled out a folded paper, older than the letter Keanu had already read. They handed it to him slowly, as though passing something dangerous. Keanu unfolded it, his eyes scanning the faded ink. His breath caught. The words on the page cut through him like a blade. It spoke of betrayal, but not the betrayal he expected. It spoke of protection, sacrifice, and choices made in silence. It revealed that someone close to him had hidden truths not to harm him, but to shield him. They had carried the burden so he could live without it crushing his heart. His throat tightened as he whispered, "You kept this from me all this time?" Tears welled in the figure's eyes. "I thought it was the only way. I thought if you never knew, you could live free. But now everything has changed. The ones who wanted to bury this truth forever have returned. They know you are searching. They will come for you." Suddenly, the sound of rustling leaves broke the silence. Keanu turned sharply, his body tense. Shadows moved in the trees nearby. The figure grabbed his arm, their voice trembling. "They are here." Out of the darkness, two men stepped forward, their faces hidden beneath caps, their movements sharp and heavy. Their eyes locked on Keanu and the figure. One of them spoke coldly. "You should not have opened the letter." The suspense sharpened like a knife. Keanu's heart pounded as the men stepped closer, their presence heavy, their intentions clear. The figure whispered urgently, "Run, Keanu, now!" But Keanu did not move. His chest heaved as he stared at the men. He had been haunted by silence too long. He could not run again. Instead, he stood taller, his voice steady despite the fear inside. "Tell me the truth here. Tell me now, before they silence us both." The figure looked at him, their eyes filled with both fear and love. Their lips trembled, and finally they spoke. "The truth is, you were never meant to live this life alone. Everything you thought was lost was taken from you. And the ones standing here now, they are the reason." Keanu's body froze. The ground beneath him seemed to vanish. The men's faces hardened as they stepped closer. And in that moment, Keanu realized he was standing on the edge of a secret that had the power to break everything open. Part 5 closes with Keanu surrounded by shadows at the river bend, the secret finally beginning to rise and danger pressing in from every side. The air around the river bend grew colder, heavier as the two men stepped closer. Their eyes were sharp, their movements tense. Keanu stood still, the letter pressed tightly in his pocket, his heart pounding like a drum. Beside him, the figure shook with fear but did not move away. The silence between them cracked when one of the men spoke. "You were warned not to look. You should have burned the letter. The truth was never meant to reach you." Keanu's jaw tightened. His voice was calm but heavy. "Then why hide it? What truth is so dangerous that it must be buried in the dark?" The men exchanged glances, their silence louder than words. Keanu could feel it, There was more here, more than betrayal, more than secrecy. And he was standing in the middle of it, no longer willing to turn away. The figure stepped forward, their voice trembling but firm. "Stop hiding. He deserves to know. You tried to erase his past, but you will not erase his future." Keanu turned, his eyes locking on the figure. "Tell me, please." Tears filled their eyes as they whispered, "You were never left alone. The night I disappeared, I did it to protect you. They came for me. They wanted me to carry their lies, but I could not let them use you. So I walked away, and for years I carried the secret. But now, you must hear it." Keanu's chest tightened. "What secret?" The figure looked at him, their voice breaking. "The life you thought was taken from you, it was stolen. The love you thought was gone, it was hidden. Everything that left you broken was not fate, it was choice. Their choice." Keanu's breath caught. The two men stepped closer, their faces hard. But the figure raised a hand. "You cannot stop him anymore. He knows enough. And he will know everything." Suddenly, the men rushed forward. Keanu instinctively grabbed the figure's arm and pulled them back. The struggle was fast, sharp, filled with noise and fear. The men shouted threats, demanding the letter, demanding silence. But Keanu held his ground. "You can take the letter," Keanu shouted, "but you cannot take the truth. It is already alive." The words seemed to cut through the air. The men hesitated, their anger burning in their eyes. But something shifted. They saw that the silence they had built for years was breaking, and nothing could hold it anymore. With a final glare, they turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving only the echo of their threat. This is not over. The river flowed quietly again, the night wrapping itself in silence. Keanu stood trembling, his breath heavy, his chest burning. The figure looked at him, their tears falling freely now. "You see," they whispered, "you were never abandoned. Every step of the way I was fighting for you. I vanished because I believed one day you would be strong enough to face the truth." Keanu's eyes softened, his voice breaking as he spoke. "All those years I thought I was alone. All those nights I believed you left because I wasn't enough. And now I know. You carried the pain so I didn't have to." The figure nodded, their shoulders shaking. "And now it is your turn to carry the truth, but not as a burden, as strength. You must live, not with fear, but with kindness. You must show the world that even the deepest lies cannot bury love forever." Keanu's eyes filled with tears. He reached out, holding their hand tightly, his voice steady despite the storm in his heart. "Then I will live that way. I will not let the past break me. I will turn it into something better." The camera would linger on their hands joined together, the river flowing in the background like time itself moving forward. The silence no longer felt heavy. It felt alive, filled with hope. As dawn began to rise, Keanu walked away from the river with the figure by his side. The letter remained in his pocket, but it no longer felt like a weight. It was a reminder, not of betrayal, but of resilience, of kindness, of the strength to face shadows and still choose light. The story ends not with the secret destroying him, but with the truth freeing him. He had been haunted by silence for years, but now he understood. Even in darkness, he was never truly alone. Part 6 closes with Keanu walking into the sunrise, his heart lighter, his spirit stronger, and the truth finally setting him free.